So just a brief introduction to my friend Nick Wilshire. As mentioned, Nick Wilshire is based in Shenzhen. He is a good friend from right across the border, and in most years, I would be crossing that border fairly regularly to join him at events and see how things are going up in Shenzhen or Guangzhou. A brief introduction to Nick. He is one of the officers of the Australian Chambers of Commerce based in Shenzhen. He also runs his own recruitment agency based in Shenzhen called ZH Recruit. And recently has also invested in some physical factories in Guangdong province, which I'm sure he'll be able to tell you more about. So was that a good introduction to what you've been doing up there?
Yes. Can you hear me okay there, Tariq?
I hear you loud and clear.
Thank you.
And also a brief note to our attendees, you've probably noticed there's a chat feature over on the right, or if you're on the phone, you might see it in the drop-down menu up top. If you'd like to go ahead and post any questions, either for me or for Nick, you can go ahead and put them in there. Also let me know if you have any problems with the audio or any problems hearing Nick as well. Thanks again for bearing with us as we try and speak through there. So the main reason I wanted to get you online, Nick, is, as you know, it's now been well over a year since I've even been able to get up in Shenzhen. And you know about some of the restrictions we have here in Hong Kong, where, of course, there's mask wearing in public, 2 people to a table, people not being able to have group gatherings. And from what I've heard, a lot of life has gone back to normal far more quickly up there. And in many ways, I hear up in Mainland China, you're more in a post-COVID world than the rest of us. Can you tell us a little bit about what life and business has been like up there over this past year?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tariq, and thank you to all your guests in the audience there. In Shenzhen at the moment, things are pretty much back to normal, obviously post-COVID, so the landscape looks a bit different. Everyone's still wearing masks. And it is required when you're on public transport to still wear masks. From a business perspective, my recruitment company is going gangbusters at the moment. We have got a number of different roles with the top companies moving forward, and they're moving forward quite rapidly. There are industries that have certainly taken the hit, obviously that being retail. Retail is really starting to sort of, recover. Finding it very difficult to recover. But tourism as well, the domestic tourism here is really starting to take off. As I see here at the seaside resort, actually in Shenzhen, probably about 45 minutes drive from the CBD, it's packed. There's people everywhere. There's people all over the beach. And there's just a wonderful, wonderful atmosphere here throughout the community. So things are certainly back to normal on this side of the border, and certainly that seems to be making its way through to the rest of China as well.
That's especially great to hear about how the recruiting business has been going gangbusters. Are there differences in what you would say it was like pre-COVID and post-COVID?
I think coming up to pre-COVID, it was very slow. Decisions were very slow. People, because of what was happening with the trade war between the US and China, decisions were very slow. People didn't know what was going to happen. And I think that sort of emulated through into the early parts of COVID. But now, with the Biden administration, the Chinese companies and the government seem to be a lot more positive towards the trade, that things will get resolved. It's certainly, you can see that certainly with the momentum with respect to companies hiring. They're making very fast decisions. The way that they're making decisions are very different. They're not making decisions based on a traditional method. The approach that they're taking at the moment is very much based on, companies in Hong Kong looking to hire people in China. Everything would have to be done via Zoom or through some type of virtual sort of connection. And the interview process, because the positions that are available at the moment are usually ones that are pretty urgent. Otherwise, the companies are just going to see what they can find themselves, in a more sort of a slower period. But there are definitely a lot of positions that are available. and things. The process seems to be, although a lot different from traditional methods, seems to be very fast.
Is there a difference in the types of roles, like in what roles are being hired for more and less?
Yeah, well, I think the reason why recruitment is really picking up is because people can't come into China as easily as what they have been able to come through. So I've employed quite a few people from Singapore to work into China. So for a candidate in Singapore, or whether it be in Hong Kong or Australia or in the US or Europe, decide to hire somebody, and likewise, when that candidate decides to accept that position, it is a very serious decision that people are making, both on the candidate and also the company perspective. So it's usually in roles, for example, in Shenzhen, there's a very big shortage of all the different industries, especially from a technical perspective, because there's just not the talent here. There's a young generation here, but you just don't have the experience. So that experience is usually in a place like Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Sydney, or New York.
So on that experience front, are you also seeing an acceleration in the need to get that talent up to speed, whether it's cross-border training or other ways to try and upgrade that onshore talent?
Well, that's what they can't do at the moment, because people aren't able to travel as easily as what people were able to. And this is specifically with international companies. And we do a lot of our work. We do probably about 40% is with the local companies, 60% is with international companies. Usually they don't want to train people at the moment. They want someone that's experienced for that reason. They don't want somebody that they're going to have to train because of the complications around training. So yeah, companies are sort of more focused on hiring people with experience rather than people without experience.
I would have imagined, maybe this is a bit of an obvious question, you would also be seeing less cross-province hires, or has that not really changed at all? Are you still seeing people moving to Shenzhen from other parts of China, or has that changed?
So definitely, I think it's about acquiring talent, so it doesn't matter where the talent lies. They get it, whether it's in Beijing or Shanghai or Wuhan or wherever that talent may be. They're going to be going after that, and they're going to be going after that aggressively, because domestically, unless there's an outbreak, you don't have the quarantine period. So someone can move from Shanghai to Shenzhen without quarantine. But the challenge that candidates have is the momentum, the sentiment. People just don't know what's going to happen in 5 to 6 months. People don't know. So someone from Shanghai would be a lot more reluctant to move to Shenzhen, Guangzhou, or even Beijing. For that reason is they just don't know what's going to happen. So when people are a little bit afraid, they like to stay close to their family. And if their family historically are from Shanghai, Beijing, or Shenzhen, that's where they're going to stay in this tough period. That's not all. That's not everybody. Your singles, the people that are that aren't married, and a little bit more game, and a little bit more courage, they are the ones that are likely to take that jump and say, right, I'm going to try and start a new life post-COVID in Shenzhen, Guangzhou, or wherever it may be.
Well, you mentioned a little bit on how it's affected people in different family stages a little bit differently. And I know we've talked a lot about kids and schools and so on. Can you tell me a little bit about what the school situation has been like up in the mainland, and how that's affected work-life balance?
Yes, that's a very good question. At schools, at the moment, obviously, because of the Chinese New Year, they're on holiday. And the holiday, from what I can see at this moment, kids will start going back to school late February / early March. And it seems like that's going to be the case. But if we can remember this time last year, kids didn't go back to school until 2 months after the Chinese New Year. But everything as of the 17th of February seems to be going back to normal. So The schools haven't been affected.
So you mean you've been having mostly in-person lessons since when?
I think it would be about since May of 2020.
So
that doesn't mean to say, but there's going to be, so if you're traveling from somewhere where there's a hotspot and you're going to be coming back to Shenzhen, I think your kids will be required to quarantine for 2 weeks. But most people aren't, I don't think a lot of people are going back to their hometowns, especially if there's an outbreak there, because I think they've been told, whether it's with their occupations or with the schools, they've been told very bluntly that if you go to that spot, when you come back, you will be required to quarantine for 2 weeks.
And is it quarantine in a hotel, quarantine at home? How does the quarantine work there?
It would generally be quarantine in hotels. I think there are some people that are allowed to quarantine at home, but I think it really depends on the situation and where where you're coming from. If you're coming from a place where it's not so bad, then it could be, you could be able to do that quarantine at home. They just have someone that will come and check on you. Or alternatively, if it's from somewhere more serious, possibly overseas, then you would have to quarantine in a government allocated location.
And have you had to do that? Like, I actually haven't been keeping track of if you've done any inter-province travel. Have you gotten caught in any of those stuff?
Yes, so I've done it, and I had to. We have some challenges at the moment. We've got a court case that we've got at the moment, and I was in court probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And one of the requirements of me actually entering the court and participating in the court case was that I show to the court that I don't have the virus. So I'd have to go to the hospital, show them that, and then the court would look at that, and then I could enter into the court. So, and that was in a different province. So that was required. So that was in Jiangxi province, which is right next to Guangdong province. And I was required to show that on entry into the court.
So you did that in Jiangxi. You went over there to a hospital, got the test, got the proof, took that to the court.
That's correct. Yes, that's right.
And court was in person. It wasn't virtual.
No, that's right. From what I understand, all the courts are in person. But I don't know. Don't hold me on that.
Wow.
But I wasn't certainly given the option of having a virtual court.
Well, I mean, it's one of these many things where it seems that we've been, even though we're 50 kilometers apart, living almost in two completely different worlds, how many things have gone virtual on this side of the border? And those of us with kids here in Hong Kong know very well when was the last time that our kids had in-person school, and how many things have just gone virtual and online. I haven't had any court cases, within the past year, so I probably need to talk to some lawyers here about it. Of course, we've been making fun of that one lawyer in the U.S. who had a cat filter, and apparently showed up to cat on a Zoom trial as a cat, and that made its rounds around social media last week. So one thing I guess I haven't fully appreciated, and I would think the audience should know, one of the reasons that we've had some technical issues is that I am calling Nick Wilshire on his Chinese New Year holiday, and he was kind enough to still schedule this and do it here. Can you tell us a little bit about where you are and what you're up to this holiday week?
Yeah, that's good. So we've decided that because I've got an ongoing I'm required to go to court quite frequently. I've decided to stay locally. So I'm still here in Shenzhen because what I'm concerned about is if I go to a different province. For example, I was intending to go to Hainan, the tropical island off the coast of Guangdong, off in the south of China. So what I was a bit worried about is if there was an outbreak of the virus and I get quarantined, that might affect my attendance into court.
Yeah.
So I've just decided to stay in Shenzhen. So we're in the seaside village of Xichong, Xichong, which is about 45 minutes from the government building in CBD in Shenzhen, in Fujian in Shenzhen. And we're here with a group of friends, American friends, and we're enjoying this wonderful resort. We're literally about 10, 15 minutes walk from a really good surf beach. So I've got my surfboards and bodyboards and boogie boards and all that. I've got the kids here. It's wonderful. There's plenty of people around. The weather's about 26 degrees, blue sky, wonderful food. It's just absolutely amazing. But there's quite a few people around, so there's not. I think a lot of people in Shenzhen have decided to do what we've done: stay within Shenzhen, but just go and have a break and enjoy this relaxation period.
No, that's that's nice to hear. Although, I think when we try and tally up, if we almost try to have a comparison table of what are the things that you can easily do over there, what are the things that we can do here. I mean, officially, a lot of the beaches and a lot of the public leisure facilities here have been closed. Like, you're not even supposed to go to a public barbecue pit or anything over here. Of course, many people here would say that really doesn't make any sense. If you don't let people go out and have a barbecue, they're just going to have hot pot at home, and it's not like they're any less likely to spread the virus around with them that way. But a lot of things I don't think quite make as much sense, and that's where we're comparing differences between here and there. Now, one thing I also heard when you talked about proof that you didn't have the virus, I heard that you have that either in your WeChat or in your Alipay. It's encoded in your phone somewhere. Is that still the system that you use? Is that still what they check when you enter buildings, for example?
That's correct. That's exactly right. Everywhere you go, you've just got to scan your phone, and they've got I'm not a tech person, so I don't understand the intricate windings of how it works, but everywhere you go, whether you're going to the beach, you've got to scan. Whether you're going to stay in a hotel, you've got to scan. If you want to get on public transport, you've got to scan. So I suppose it's the government's way of keeping a tab on how this virus is spreading, and as soon as something comes up, they're able to jump on it as fast as they can.
So if I understand correctly, it's basically a full contact tracing system, if I understand right. It's a way of just making sure so that, let's say, for example, if you were at a certain place at a certain time, and it was later discovered that a person tested positive who was there, they'd have a way of reaching you.
That's exactly right. Exactly. It's spot on.
Well,
very advanced. Very, very advanced.
Well, and that's the era of technology that we're living in now. For all the good and everything that it can provide. I suppose it's still too early to talk about international travel. I think I had recently looked at what it would take to kind of come and cross the border, and it seems that it's not as prohibitive as it used to be, although there's still the quarantine requirement for almost anyone coming in from overseas. Have you been in touch with anyone who's, say, come in from Australia recently or from anywhere else and kept up with what the international travel rules are?
Yes, well, at the moment, I think it's 3 weeks quarantine, 2 weeks in a government facility or a government-designated facility, and 1 week at home. Now I've been in contact with people that have come in the last couple of months, and, the conditions are pretty average, to say the least, that they've had to stay in, which has been a bit of a challenge for a lot of sort of, high-flying expats that are coming back that are used to staying in, luxurious five-star hotels. So, yeah. But if people are just coming in, there's a process that needs people need to go to. If people want to come back to China, they need to follow that process. I think that there are certain countries, I don't know the names of those countries, but I know that there are countries that won't accept visitors at this moment, even if they're quarantined, because the virus is just too bad where they're from. So, but I think most sort of Asian countries, North American countries are able to enter, but I think there's a little bit of concern towards one or two nations in Europe possibly.
No, that's all quite understandable. So, all right. Well, that's been I would say a pretty good summary. I did mention to everyone I want to keep this nice and brief, and I definitely do want to thank the attendees who've been able to try and put up with the audio on the speakerphone here. One brief reminder I will tell everyone is that all views expressed here are our own personal views, and we are not speaking on behalf of our respective companies. But at this point, I think we'll go ahead and open the floor to any questions and see if any questions that you might have. You can go ahead and place them in the chat, or you can also raise your hand, and I can enable you to speak if you'd like to ask that way. So one question I certainly have is that you were mentioning earlier you had plans to go to Hainan. When do you think your next trip is going to be, whether to Hainan or to somewhere else?
Probably as soon as this court case is over. So I don't know when that may be. Very hard to work out. So possibly, hopefully things will get sorted in the next 3 months. So I don't have a view of travelling anywhere except for where our factories are in the next 3 months.
Well, I mean, I guess that's more or less a good reason. It's a reason that would have kept us from traveling years ago rather than just way over the past year. And if I also ask, do you have any views on the vaccines?
What was that, sorry?
Any views on the vaccines?
Yes, so there's, in China, they've got the vaccine that's getting rolled out quite rapidly, considering the size of the population here. I know quite a few people that have had their second jab, and they seem to be handling it fine. With respect to the side effects that the vaccine had, I don't know. I haven't heard anything negative. I'm sure that if there was, you would be hearing it in other countries, probably not necessarily here. So I haven't heard anything about the negative effects or side effects of the vaccine. I think that's a question that's on a lot of people's minds. There's a lot of expats here at the moment that want to get vaccines. They don't know how they're going to get vaccinated. Because if you're an expat, you're sitting here, whose responsibility is it to vaccinate you? Is it the local Chinese government, or is it the consulate? Is it their responsibility? I think the emphasis is falling on the consulate. And because we're an overseas, because a lot of people, a lot of citizens within our own countries haven't been vaccinated. I don't think anybody has in my country, in Australia. I don't see us getting vaccinated in the near future, that's for sure. And we haven't heard anything with respect from our consulate as to when we're going to get vaccinated. And I think that's the case for a lot of expats that are living here. A lot of them are living here in China, and there's just no communication from their respective consulates as to how they're going to get vaccinated, especially if you're just working in a normal job. Because I think the emphasis is falling on the government, it's not necessarily companies. Although I think companies are having their own rollout, depending on what industry you're in. If you're in the airline industry, I know that a lot of the airlines have been vaccinated. It doesn't matter whether you're back office or you're working in the public domain. A lot of people there have been vaccinated. People that are at schools, the teachers, I think, have been vaccinated, but I don't think the students have yet. In the hospitals, I think a lot of the hospital staff have been vaccinated. Government. So I even think security, people that are in security, they've been vaccinated. But like I said, there's a lot of questions at the moment here as to where the expat community is going to get vaccinated.
Well, I mean, I think, and that's just talking about one group. I mean, I think across countries, you're looking at, who's going to get the vaccine, when will, how will it be decided actually which vaccine, what the timeline is going to be. I guess the good news is at least it seems that, not as much as being held back for you up there than it is for much of the rest of the world until we have it. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for joining us. It's been great speaking with you, and I want to thank all of our attendees for making it and for putting up with our speakerphone option here. As always, there will be a recording that you should get a link to shortly after this, and when we post this video, there will be other places to post any comments, questions, or other updates. Thanks again for joining us, and we will look forward to our next conversation, hopefully with better audio and video. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me.